The mission that went wrong. The stars stretched endlessly, bright against the deep black of space. It should have been a moment of triumph. Humanity's first deep space battleship, Vanguard, was making history, leading Earth's expansion beyond the solar system. Captain Ryan Hale had spent his entire career preparing for this mission. He had trained harder than anyone, fought for this position, and now he was watching his greatest failure unfold. The ship was falling. The warning signs. Ryan gripped the controls, his fingers tightening over the holographic display as alarms blared throughout the command deck. What the hell is happening? His voice was sharp, demanding answers. His second in command, Lieutenant Carter, was already running diagnostics. Her face was pale. "The navigation system is compromised," she said. Some kind of gravity well. We didn't detect it in time." Ryan's stomach twisted. They were in uncharted space. No satellites, no relay stations, just them and the unknown. And now, they were losing control. The crash that shouldn't have happened. The ship trembled violently. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Brace for impact," Ryan shouted. The last thing he saw before the world went black was the surface of an alien planet rushing toward them. Then, silence. The aftermath. Ryan woke up to the scent of burning metal. His head pounded. His chest ached. The ship's bridge was in ruins, glass shattered, consoles sparking, smoke rising from broken panels. He groaned, forcing himself to sit up. Survivors. He needed to find his crew. Through the haze, he saw Lieutenant Carter, bruised but alive. "Captain, we crashed." Ryan clenched his jaw. "I know." What he didn't know was why. Because he had checked the flight path 100 times. There was no gravity well, no anomaly. They weren't supposed to crash. Something had pulled them down. And that meant one thing. They were not alone. The planet of shadows. The survivors gathered near the wreckage, their expressions grim. The air was thin but breathable. The sky was a deep purple, 2 suns hanging low on the horizon. Strange plants twisted in the wind, their leaves glowing faintly. Ryan's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't just some random planet. Something was watching them. Carter stood beside him, scanning the perimeter. "We need to secure resources, Captain. Food, water." A scream cut through the air. The crew spun around. One of the engineers, Martinez, was gone. No trace, no sound. Just vanished. Ryan's blood ran cold. This planet wasn't just dangerous. It was hunting them. The mistake that led them here. As the crew searched for Martinez, Ryan replayed the crash in his mind. What went wrong? He had followed the mission plan exactly. But then, his chest tightened. Because suddenly, he remembered something he hadn't noticed before. The coordinates. They weren't random. They weren't a mistake. Someone, or something, led them here on purpose. And now, they were trapped. Ryan exhaled sharply. This wasn't just a mission failure. It was a setup. And if they didn't figure out why, none of them would survive. The first encounter. The air was too still. Captain Ryan Hale stood near the wreckage of the Vanguard, his pulse steady, but his instincts screaming. They had been on this planet for less than an hour, and already one of his crew was missing. The others stood in tense silence, scanning the dark jungle that surrounded them. Strange, twisting trees loomed overhead, their leaves glowing faintly, pulsing like veins. It was unnatural, and Ryan knew they were not alone. The vanishing. Martinez. Ryan's voice cut through the heavy air. No answer. Lieutenant Carter checked her scanner, but the readings made no sense. No life signs, Captain. Ryan's fists clenched. That was impossible. Martinez had been there seconds ago. And now, it was like he had been erased. Ryan turned to his crew. No one moves alone. We find him. Now. They spread out in pairs, weapons ready. Ryan and Carter took the lead, following Martinez's last known position. The jungle was unnervingly silent. No wind, no insects, just the sound of their own breathing. Then, something moved. The watchers in the dark. Ryan froze. Carter's hand tightened on her rifle. Between the trees, shadows shifted. At first, Ryan thought it was just the way the glowing leaves cast their light. Then, he saw them. Figures. Tall. Still. Watching. Their bodies blended with the jungle, but their eyes glowed faintly, unblinking, fixed on him. Ryan's pulse spiked. Not animals. Not human. Something else. Something waiting. Carter whispered, "Orders, Captain." Ryan's mind raced. They had no idea what they were dealing with, but one thing was certain. They had walked into something bigger than just a crash landing. The Forgotten War. Ryan took a careful step forward. The figures did not move. He raised his hands, slowly, non-threatening. "We don't want trouble." The jungle remained silent. Then, a whispering sound filled the air. Ryan's vision blurred for a split second, images flashing through his mind. Cities burning, ships falling from the sky. Creatures like these, fighting something else. It wasn't just a jungle. It was a graveyard. Ryan staggered back. Carter caught his arm. "Captain, what's wrong?" Ryan's head pounded, because he finally understood. The war he saw in his vision. It never ended. The attack. Before Ryan could speak, the shadows moved. Fast. One of the creatures lunged from the trees. A blur of motion. A flash of steel. Ryan barely dodged, rolling back as a blade slammed into the dirt where he stood. Carter fired first. Blue plasma bolts cut through the air. The creature twisted away, faster than anything Ryan had ever seen. Not a wild animal. A warrior. They weren't just watching. They were waiting for the right moment to strike. And now, the fight had begun. The fight for survival. More shadows rushed from the jungle, their movements silent, precise. Ryan and Carter fired, but their weapons seemed too slow against creatures that moved like ghosts. The other crew members heard the gunfire and ran to help. It became a chaos of flashes and steel. Ryan ducked as a blade sliced past his head. His instincts screamed, but something inside him sharpened. He moved before he could think. Spun, struck, felt his fist connect. The creature stumbled back. Ryan's eyes widened. He had just landed a hit on something that was faster than human reflexes should allow. The creature looked just as shocked as he was. And then, it spoke. The warning. The voice was low, distorted, alien. But somehow, Ryan understood it. "You were not meant to come here, human." Ryan's stomach twisted. Before he could respond, the creature vanished back into the trees, along with the others. Just like that, the jungle was silent again. The fight was over. But the war, it had just begun. The truth begins to unravel. Carter breathed heavily, gripping her rifle. What the hell was that? Ryan looked at the ground where the creature had stood. A symbol was carved into the dirt. One he had seen before. Back on the Vanguard's navigational system. The coordinates that had led them here. They weren't random. Someone, or something, had wanted them to land here. Ryan exhaled sharply. They weren't just stranded. They were part of something far bigger than they could understand. And if they didn't figure it out soon, they wouldn't make it off this planet alive. The Forgotten War. The jungle was silent again. Ryan's heart pounded, but his instincts screamed this wasn't over. The creatures had vanished, melting back into the trees like shadows, but they had left something behind. A symbol, carved into the dirt. A symbol Ryan had seen before. And he wasn't supposed to have. The message in the dirt. Lieutenant Carter knelt beside the marking, scanning it with her wrist display. "Captain, this is impossible." Ryan frowned. "Why?" Carter turned the screen toward him. Because this symbol predates Earth's recorded history. Ryan's breath slowed. How? How could a symbol from an unknown alien species be in their navigation system? How could it be waiting for them on this planet? Unless... Ryan's chest tightened. Unless someone from Earth already knew about it. The crew loses faith. The other survivors gathered around, their faces tense. The engineer, Ross, shook his head. So what now, Captain? We just wait here and hope those things don't come back. Ryan exhaled sharply. No, we figure out what they want. Carter narrowed her eyes. They could have killed us, Ryan. Why didn't they? Ryan stared at the symbol in the dirt. Because we're part of something bigger. Ross scoffed. Bigger than what? A crash? A mistake? Ryan's jaw tightened. Because he wasn't so sure it was a mistake anymore. The ruins beneath their feet. The jungle stretched endlessly, but something felt off. The ground beneath Ryan's boots was too solid. Not soft earth. Something beneath it. He knelt, brushing aside the dirt, and then his fingers hit metal. A hollow thud. The others stiffened. Ross stepped forward. Tell me that's just a rock. Ryan dug deeper, revealing a metallic surface, smooth, ancient. The jungle wasn't just a jungle. They were standing on something buried. Something old. And it was waiting to be found. The door to the past. Ryan traced his fingers over the surface. More symbols. This wasn't just wreckage. It was a door. And Ryan's gut told him, whatever was inside was the reason they were here. Carter glanced at him. Captain, you're not seriously thinking of going in there. Ryan didn't answer, because his fingers had already found a control panel. A sequence of alien glyphs. He pressed one, and the ground rumbled. The metal slid open, revealing a dark passageway leading underground. A faint golden light pulsed from below. And then, a voice echoed from the shadows. You should not be here. The Guardian awakes. The crew froze. The voice was not human, but it was ancient, powerful. Ryan lifted his weapon, heart racing. A figure stepped into the light. Not a shadow, not a creature, but something different. A machine. Tall, sleek. Its body made of dark metal, glowing with veins of golden energy. A guardian. A sentinel of the past. And its eyes locked onto Ryan. The truth buried in time. The machine's voice was calm, steady. You are not the first. Ryan's stomach twisted. Not the first. He stepped forward. What do you mean? The Guardian tilted its head. Your kind has been here before. Long ago. Ryan's pulse spiked. The crew stared in shock. Humans. Here. Before. The Guardian continued. And like before, you will awaken the war. Ryan's chest tightened. He wasn't just here by accident. He was walking into history's worst mistake. And this time, he was the one who had to stop it. The mistake that changed everything. The golden glow pulsed softly from the machine's body, casting eerie shadows on the metallic walls. Ryan stood frozen, his heartbeat steady, but his mind racing. Your kind has been here before, the Guardian had said. The words echoed in his head. This planet wasn't unknown. This was a graveyard, a battlefield, a mistake humanity had already made once before. And now he had led them right back to it. The first truth. Lieutenant Carter stepped closer, her voice tense. What do you mean humans have been here? The Guardian's glowing eyes locked onto her. You are the children of the first war. Ryan's chest tightened. What war? The Guardian's voice hummed like an ancient machine waking up. The war your people started. Ryan's stomach twisted. No, that couldn't be right. Humanity had only just reached deep space. They were explorers, not conquerors. Unless this wasn't their first time. The mistake of the past. The walls of the underground chamber shifted, revealing holographic images, cities in ruins, alien ships falling from the sky. Carter inhaled sharply. That's. Ryan's breath caught. It was Earth, or at least something that looked like Earth. Massive war machines marched across burning landscapes. Strange, tall figures, aliens unlike any Ryan had seen, stood side by side with humans in ancient armor. They hadn't been at war with each other. They had fought together, against something else. The Guardian spoke again. You were allies, until you betrayed them. Ryan's fingers curled into fists. Carter's face paled. That's not possible. We weren't even in space back then. The Guardian turned its glowing eyes to her. That is the lie they wanted you to believe. Ryan's world shifted. They hadn't been the first humans in space. They were just the first to remember. The enemy that never left. The deep rumble shook the chamber. Ross, the engineer, looked around wildly. Captain. That doesn't sound good. The Guardian's eyes flared. They have awakened. Ryan snapped to attention. Who? The machine's voice was colder now. The ones who never stopped fighting. The ground split open, and something moved beneath them. Ryan saw black armor, glowing red eyes, bodies shifting unnaturally as they emerged from hidden vaults. Warriors, not organic, not machines. Something in between. Something built to kill. And now they had been reactivated. The enemy from humanity's forgotten war was still here. And they were still waiting to finish it. The attack begins. Before Ryan could react, the first warrior lunged. Faster than anything human. Carter fired. Blue plasma bolts ripped through the air, but the creature dodged with impossible speed. It didn't just move. It predicted. Ryan barely had time to roll aside before a blackened blade slammed into the ground where he had stood. The war wasn't history anymore. It was happening right now. The impossible connection. Ryan's instincts kicked in. He dodged before he thought, moved before he planned. And then something terrifying happened. He could see them, not just their bodies, their patterns, their movements. It was like his brain was running faster than reality. For a split second, he wasn't just fighting them. He was thinking like them. And that's when he knew. This wasn't his first battle. It was just the first one he could remember. Carter's voice snapped him back. Captain, we can't hold them off. Ryan gritted his teeth. Then we don't fight. We run. The Great Escape. Ryan grabbed Carter and Ross, pulling them toward the exit as the creature swarmed forward. The Guardian's voice echoed behind them. You must not leave. Ryan didn't stop. Not an option. They burst through the underground doorway, back into the jungle, only to find more waiting. A full army of black-armored warriors, their red eyes glowing in the night. They had been waiting for this moment. Ryan's breath came fast. They were surrounded. No way out. No backup. And then, the trees shifted, and from the darkness, the creatures from before emerged. The ones who had watched them, who had tested them. But now, they weren't just watching. Now, they were here to fight. And for the first time, Ryan realized they weren't the enemy. They had been waiting for someone to lead them. And that someone was him. The rise of the legend. The jungle was no longer silent. The ground shook beneath Ryan's feet. The black-armored warriors stood motionless, their glowing red eyes fixed on him. On the other side, the shadowy watchers, the ones who had observed them since the crash, now stood ready. It wasn't just a battle. It was a reckoning. And Ryan Hale was standing between two armies. The awakening. Ryan's fingers curled into fists, his mind racing. He should have been terrified, outnumbered, trapped. But instead, he felt like he had been here before. His body didn't just prepare for a fight. It was waiting for his command. Carter's voice was sharp. Captain, we're going to die if we don't move. But Ryan didn't move. Because suddenly, he understood. The creatures in black weren't just warriors. They were waiting for an order. His order. The war that never ended. A deep metallic voice echoed from the enemy ranks. We have waited for you. Ryan's breath hitched. Me? The voice rippled through his mind. Your kind began this war. Your kind will end it. Ryan exhaled sharply. This wasn't just a forgotten battlefield. This was the last battle of a war that never truly ended. And he was the only one left to finish it. The power he shouldn't have. One of the black armored warriors stepped forward, a massive blade in hand. It should have been alien, unfamiliar, but Ryan knew exactly how to use it. The warrior knelt, offering the weapon. Carter stared in shock. What the hell is happening? Ryan didn't answer. Because the moment his fingers wrapped around the hilt, something inside him woke up. A flood of memories that weren't his. Battles fought under skies that had never existed. Commands spoken in a language he had never learned. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was a leader. A legend that had been erased. And now, it was coming back. The final choice. The enemy began to move. Ryan turned to Carter and Ross, his voice steady. This fight is bigger than us. Carter swallowed hard. What do we do? Ryan tightened his grip on the ancient weapon. We win. The jungle erupted in fire and war. And Ryan Hale charged into history. The battle that changed the galaxy. The first clash of steel and energy sent a shockwave through the jungle. Ryan Hale moved without thinking, his body acting before his mind could process. The black armored warriors lunged forward with inhuman speed, their red eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. The shadowy watchers, the ones who had observed him from the start, charged to meet them, their forms blurring like ghosts. And Ryan, he was in the middle of it all. Not just fighting, commanding. The power that was never meant to return. The ancient weapon in Ryan's hand felt like an extension of himself. He swung, and the ground cracked beneath his feet. His body moved faster, stronger. This wasn't just skill. This was something deeper, something buried in his blood. The first enemy rushed him, a towering figure clad in dark metal, its blade humming with energy. Ryan dodged before the attack even came. His mind had already seen it, and when he struck, he didn't just land a hit. He obliterated the enemy's armor. Carter staggered back in shock. What the hell was that? Ryan exhaled sharply. I think I'm starting to remember. And that scared him more than anything. The enemy speaks. A voice rumbled through the battlefield, deeper than anything human. You are waking up, Commander. Ryan froze. Commander. Not Captain. Commander. The enemy knew him. Not just as an outsider, but as one of them. Ryan's pulse spiked. Who am I? He demanded. The enemy leader, a towering figure with burning red eyes, stepped forward. You are the last of the first. Ryan's world tilted. The first. The first what? But before he could ask, the enemy attacked. The turning point. Ryan blocked a strike, his blade singing as it clashed against alien steel. But he wasn't alone. The shadowy warriors, his warriors, fought as if they had been waiting for this moment. For him. For the leader they lost. Carter fought beside him, her plasma rifle burning through the enemy ranks. Ross tore into the attackers with whatever weapons he could find. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were winning. And Ryan, he wasn't just fighting. He was remembering. The war that never ended. The battle raged on, but Ryan's mind flashed with memories. Not from books. Not from training. From another life. A life where he had stood on this very ground, leading these very warriors, fighting this very enemy. And then, betrayal. Something had gone wrong. Someone had erased everything. And now, it was all coming back. The final stand. The enemy leader raised his blade, eyes locked onto Ryan. You were never supposed to return. Ryan's grip tightened around his weapon. Too bad. He launched forward. The ground shook beneath his feet, Energy crackled through his veins. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was the end of a war that had lasted for centuries. And for the first time, Ryan knew exactly who he was and what he had to do. The legend lives on. The battlefield burned. Smoke curled through the jungle, glowing embers floating like dying stars. The ground was littered with the remains of the ancient war, blackened metal, shattered armor, and warriors who would never rise again. But the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Ryan Hale stood at the center of it all, his weapon humming with energy, his breath steady, focused. Across from him, the enemy leader, a towering figure in black armor, did not waver. "You were never meant to wake up, Commander." Ryan exhaled, his grip tightening. "And you were never meant to win." Then they clashed. The final duel. The enemy moved first, faster than any human could track. But Ryan wasn't just human anymore. His instincts saw the attack before it happened. His body moved before his mind told it to. Steel met steel, sending out a shockwave that shook the battlefield. The enemy snarled, pushing harder, but Ryan held his ground. Because this wasn't just a fight. This was his war, his unfinished war. And this time, he wouldn't lose. The moment of truth. The battle blurred. Ryan's mind flashed with memories, past lives, forgotten fights, betrayals that had been erased. He saw himself standing in another battlefield, giving orders to warriors that no longer existed. The leader, a warrior, a man who had once held the power to end this war. And now it was his second chance. The enemy lunged for a killing strike. Ryan moved before the blade even fell. A single arc of his sword, a burst of golden energy. The enemy staggered back, and then collapsed. The war ends, but the fight isn't over. Silence. The enemy forces froze, watching their leader fall. The warriors who had followed Ryan, the watchers in the shadows, did not cheer. Because this wasn't victory. This was a warning. Carter stepped beside him, breathing heavily. "It's over." Ryan shook his head. "No, it's just beginning." The last revelation. The guardian from the ruins emerged, its metallic form flickering with energy. "You have chosen to remember," it said. Ryan's jaw tightened. "I didn't have a choice." The guardian studied him. "You did." Ryan exhaled, staring at the battlefield. This war, it wasn't new. It had been waiting for him to return, because the universe had never forgotten. And now, neither had he. "The future awaits." Carter placed a hand on his shoulder. "So what now, Captain?" Ryan stared at the stars. "Now, we find out who erased us from history. Because if someone had buried the past, they were still out there. And Ryan Hale was going to find them. The legend wasn't over. It was just getting started. The end.